Welcome one, welcome all to episode 262 of the Xbox Expansion Pass, recorded on Saturday, February 8th, 2025. I am your host, Luke Lohr, the InsipidGhost, joined by my co-host, the intrepid Captain Logun. Today we are joined by one Jesse Norris of Xbox Era to talk about the impending arrival of Avowed to Xbox, Xbox games heading to PlayStation, and we've got another indie showcase on the way. As always, we hope you enjoy the show. Logan, we like to start the show by offering words of kindness, those who have made our gaming weeks better. But first, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I am doing the show now on Elgato Prompter, which thanks to A Chick in chat for a wonderful Valentine's gift. It arrived early without any kind of like exterior packaging, so I immediately knew what it was as soon as I opened the door. Thank you, Amazon. But no, I'm having a good week. It's been really rainy, and today's like one of the few days that it's actually been like bright and sunny. So I'm peppy as a result, and we're both able to say that we're reviewing Avowed.
Yes,
and that's
not the other
all
one
we can say.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't say anything. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a lot of late nights. How about you?
My words of kindness are sent to Jesse, who very graciously agreed to hang out with us today, which I always enjoy. I've really come to love the Xbox Era community, so it's been a blast.
Thank you.
So, yeah, man.
It's been a lot of work trying to make it okay. The internet's full of asshole a-holes.
Yeah, you guys have done such a good job, though. So it's been cool. It's been cool. Jesse, how about you, man? What's made your gaming week better?
Getting Avowed done. Fully done, ready, set to premiere. Alongside everyone else's coverage next week. Finish that up on Tuesday because I was thinking other stuff's due in, even though it's way early, and I was right. So I felt really good about that because I'm just ready to go.
Yeah, that always feels good when you get that locked in, finished up, and you can like, all right, now I can move on to the next thing.
And I got it done quickly because I also, not quickly, went through the whole game. Went back, did other stuff to see the way stuff can play out. But also our art guy pre-drag is now beautifying my review articles, so it's going to look very pretty.
Nice.
If you ever saw my Starfield and my Liza P's one, Liza P, Starfield, Indiana Jones recently from John, he goes in and he just goes nuts, goes ham with all the artwork and videos and stuff in them, and they look incredible.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so cool. I feel like during all my review processes, learning how to better match my words with the visuals and make it present properly, it has been an enjoyable but difficult for me, I guess anyway, process to make that better because I'm just not naturally a producer.
I had never written or made a video before doing this. Like I'd never written articles or done a review or anything, and it's kind of crazy where it's been roughly 3.5 years of really doing it a lot, and now we became top critics on OpenCritic recently. Because if you're ever wondering that OpenCritic number, it's not everyone that lists themselves. It's only the people that have that little top critic thing under them. So we actually count on OpenCritic now. It's been cool. It's been a hell of a learning process. It's weird to just jump into something as a complete amateur, still feel like an amateur, but find some success surprisingly.
And deserve success, I feel like, because I've seen Xbox Era, I'll say the word grow, but like I don't mean just numbers. Explode. I mean like it growing in like the best of ways, community, quality, thoroughness, just what they offer. It's been really cool to see, and so cheers to you, man. It's a well-earned thing. So we have chat today. Good to see Coffee Jesus, Austin T, Munty, Gentlestone, Silkenet, Clutch Kwando in the house. Of course, a coffee chick first up today. Nisa Hauer in chat. So good to see you guys. Thank you for the kind words. People already shouting out and saying nice things about the Kerry Patel interview. Thank you guys. That made my gaming week better for sure. I was thrilled, excited. I hope it opens the door to more. But after a long time of asking, I landed that one and made my day. So that was a pure pleasure for me to get. It
was a really good interview.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. Go ahead.
I was going to say it was really nice to see your kind of questions and your delving into things compared to other people's review or like interviews with her. So it was really cool for one for you to be able to get the interview for XEP, but it was nice to kind of get some more depth, some more information as the game's like coming out and what people have been hungering to understand and learn a little bit more about this game. Is this is going to be like one of the first major games from Obsidian that isn't like Worlds. So I'm very curious to see how people engage with it.
I would say this is the first time Obsidian's truly had time and budget. That's always their entire history is like KOTOR 2 was like a year and a half or something ridiculous. Same with Vegas. Fallout New Vegas was incredibly short because it was just supposed to be an expansion that then grew because Todd Howard really liked it, despite what people think. It'll be very interesting. I think out of all these studios they bought alongside Ninja Theory, just giving this base of comfort, like we saw it with Double Fine during the Psychonauts documentary, Psych Odyssey, like finding the next funding for your game for your entire existence is the most draining thing. It's why Mimimi Games ended up giving up after putting out an incredible game in Shadow Gambit. They were like, we can't take this constant desperate search to be able to pay our devs to make anything. So
it is I think that's because we got to have the Shadow Gambit devs on. It's like it's clear they love what they do, and so many developers do, but the realities of that industry is just it's brutal. And it's why you see companies, Xbox, PlayStation, and Ubisoft, all the big ones, changing their strategy, trying to find a way to be more sustainable. You know, whether it's go multi-platform, whether it's adjust where your games are available. PlayStation removing PSN requirements in some places for their games. Like they have to find a way to be more viable, and that's important. So, you know. But thank you for the kind words on the interview, though, Logan. I appreciate you. Yeah, I was trying to do something a little bit different. I have long since wanted to talk to Carrie Patel. That was the first Xbox offered interview, I guess you would say. Like for all the stuff that's Xbox adjacent in XEP history, that one came from them, and so that was a big deal. So I really, after 5 years, man, that felt good. And it was just cool. And then Carrie Patel, of course, a wonderful interviewee, like so willing to just chat and be knowledgeable and share her insight. It was fun. So I was grateful. There you go. So good morning to Solomon McNeil and Chakmuju. We're not saying that one. Yep.
It's short for chocolate moo juice or chocolate milk.
Oh, okay. I was confused. And I was like, am I like saying something I shouldn't? Got it. There you go. Nisa says she wants a Winterboro interview. So interviews are one of those weird things. And Jesse, I don't know if you guys experience this also. The industry ebbs and flows. So like sometimes when it all hits at once. And then there's like quiet periods. And so even with reviews right now, Jesse alluding to something else he's working on, big projects, that kind of thing. I'm pouring time into Avowed, but the interviews have taken time away, which is a great thing, right? But it's a logistics thing. But I'm absolutely working because I've gotten requests for more interviews to do stuff with people, and I'll try.
But when you want to be prepared, and so it's not just you can record it in 30 minutes or something. It's you're spending a lot of time. Like we've got something we're announcing today on the podcast later that just it's nothing crazy, but it takes time to get someone on. To know you're going to have good questions for them, questions that they can answer, because you're talking to people who can move companies sometimes, whether it's a small one, a medium-sized one, a big one. Like when they have Phil on, bigger things. Recently, people are like, how come you didn't ask for this? It's because he'll never answer it. There's no point. You need to know the right way to kind of push someone in a direction to give interesting insight, and it's not just gotcha questions that people think up on social media. An actual good back and forth conversation requires a lot of forethought and planning. So even if the interview is 22 minutes long, you might have spent 20 hours around the whole thing, setting it up, figuring it out, recording it, editing it. Like it's a lot of work. And the review for Avowed, I played it for over 50 hours total, not saying how long a single playthrough is because I can't say that. But I've played it for well over 50 hours. But the actual review, getting it, making sure everything works, and we do video, so getting all the footage, doing the narration, doing the editing, all that type of stuff, it could very well end up being 70, 80 hours by the end of everything. Like, and Starfield, I played for 115 hours because I enjoyed it so much and I was an idiot. But then I spent another 20 hours on the video edit because I really wanted it to be good. And then everyone just looks at the score anyways. But I digress.
No, you nailed it, because that's how long, or I will not say like I don't think I have the same amounts of time per se, and I haven't had the time to dedicate as much, but I can said in the interview with Carrie Patel, I'm north of 20 hours right now. I can say that. I've got more to play in the playthrough that I'm currently working on. And then when the time comes to make the interview, I know this is a 60, 70 hour project in total to play, write the script, get the footage, put the footage in the right spots, edit the thumbnail. Like, it is a lot of work. And that's why I think, we say this every episode, but sincerely, when people watch it, when people click the like button or share or comment if you didn't like it and it's constructive, we really appreciate that. I love
a comment that shows you actually watched it or read it and didn't just look at the score or the headline. Like, if you just talk about the score, you just talk about the headline. I just don't even read it. I don't care most of the time. But if it's actually, I am going to talk to you about this specific thing. Perfect. I that's fine. If you don't like it, I actually had a huge problem with this, or, oh, really? I like that part. Like, that type of stuff is cool, and have a good back and forth. And that has been a big thing about our community, both on the forums and Discord and like our YouTube comment section, where it's pretty much the moment you ever insult someone, you're out. But if you want to be there and have an actual conversation, it doesn't matter if you're positive or negative about something. You just have to actually feel like a real human being discussing it, and not someone who's there just to make people upset.
Fully agree.
I think that's one of our DM groups recently that has the nerd chat guys in there. We were having a debate, and a lot of it came down to the discussion around like open worlds and what's it called, Breath of the Wild. And overall, it was a good discussion, but the point of the debate started to ebb and flow, because it was less about the design of the game and more about like personal feelings about what the game's expectations were. And it was great to have that discussion, because it made me realize, it was like, oh, well, the game could still be very well designed, but it's all right to have discussions about what you don't like and what you do like about it, as long as you recognize that is like your personal feelings on what you wanted in the game versus like the design aspect of it. And seeing comments and stuff like that on game reviews is great, because it's like, oh, well, that's how you spark new ideas. That's how you like, you give that feedback to the devs through like, constructive means, and they take that forward into the next game. Like, I know there's something with Outer Worlds 2 that won't be in Outer Worlds 1 because of a lot of the constructive feedback that came from the actual, like, the devs themselves, but also a lot of the community members. A lot of the people that love that game gave them feedback. So in Outer Worlds 2, we're not going to have to worry about that. And I'm really excited to not have to worry about that. So there's absolutely good engagement and bad engagement. And I like that you guys have that policy where if you're just going to be mean to someone, that's not allowed. That's not going to,
unless it's Nick, because he deserves it. But also, speaking of Nick, he has made that point many times, where one of the good things about the way Xbox is treated in reviews and in the community of gaming coverage in general is they are critiqued. And I do think too often the Xbox tax that people used to talk about was simply just that Xbox actually gets heavily critiqued, like you would hope all of them do. I'm sure I'll make enemies, but I thought Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth were both bad. I did not like them at all. I did not enjoy the experience of playing through either of them. But they're incredibly highly rated, because I don't feel like they were critiqued. I feel like they were just scored based on feelings from the ones I read. And people are going to go into it, and that's just a whatever for them. But we do try to actually use the whole scale. And I hate the fact that like OpenCritic and Metacritic just slam 5-point systems into 100-point scales. It just does not work. A 3 out of 5 is not a 6 or out of 10. It's not a 60 out of 100. It could be anywhere in between, but you don't know. So it sucks that they just mash everything together. And that ends up dominating online discourse, because you'll see someone give a 2 out of 5 to something. That translates to a 4, and they might be heavily weighted on Metacritic, and it yanks the score down a bunch. And that's all people end up talking about. So much online discourse becomes A versus B or A versus B versus C comparison fights instead of actually talking about games, because the reality is most people don't have enough time to play everything, let alone enough money to buy all of it. So they have to engage in it in a way that, well, I can read this in 20 minutes versus play this game for 45 hours. So I'm just going to look at a bunch of scores and then I'm going to join team shithead and go against team a-hole, and that's all they do.
It's exhausting. And I love when I hear, and I try to do this with our own coverage, when somebody explains where they're coming from or what their background is, their knowledge base in this game or genre, it's so helpful to me as a viewer or audience member to know that, all right, this person says they're very familiar with this genre or this type of game. That helps. If they're arriving and it's their first time playing this genre, that helps as well. But if people are just devolving it into numbers or going after one another because it disagrees with them, that's not fun. I like when people critique things I love. That's healthy. It's good. We need more competition and more critique in the right methods and right ways. And I think too often it's reductive, and that's not helpful. So,
Jesse, going back to your comment about how Xbox games you feel are more heavily critiqued than PlayStation games, do you feel that Avowed is going to be subject to that scenario again?
It has a tiny chance simply because it hasn't already been announced for PlayStation 5. I do think that did help with Indiana Jones a little bit in some areas. But I don't know. Like, it's not even so much Xbox and PlayStation as it is Western developed and Eastern developed. Like, Japanese games, especially in particular, definitely just have a different group of people who focus on critiquing them and doing reviews. And that group tends to be higher scores. And if you care about scores, that can be annoying. But the reality is, if you go in and read reviews, that is like the actual way to get someone's opinion on it and not just look at the score. But it takes a lot of time, especially when a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Spider-Man 2 has like 180, almost 200 reviews. So you got to just find a few you really like, outside of the insane importance that is put on aggregate scores, because there's also another website starting up from TechRaptor, I think, called criticdb.com, that we're going to be a part of just because it gets your name out there and gets you clicks. Companies really care about it because customers really care. It's kind of like, why is Andrew Wilson talking about live service? Because they tried single player after shifting from live service, and it just doesn't make as much money. Like, they go where the customers are. It's not we hate single player. It's like, no, actually single player is what they know and is easier to make a decent single player game. Like a decent live service game almost feels like a crapshoot most of the time. But they got to go where the customers are. And right now the customers are in arguing over these scores. And so scores are never going to go away. So as far as Avowed goes, I have no idea.
Interesting.
I'll be curious how... I'm sorry, Logan, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go for it.
I will be curious to know or observe how success is measured over the next year. Indiana Jones, while it was a late 2024 game, looking at, I almost mentally put it into the 2025 slate just on account of when
it will be on one platform.
For one platform, indeed.
I would think it's what everyone swapped to except for Nintendo, which is MAUs. The monthly active users. That's what they all care about. Xbox went to it a while ago. PlayStation went to it a few years back. I had someone yelling at me in chat the other day that no, PlayStation still gives all their numbers. Like, no, they don't. They give you units shipped, which they're at 65. And I think AMD just said that they're over 100 million now. So that means Xbox is at least 35 for people wondering, for the series consoles. But like, the thing all of them report and tie most of their CEO bonuses to is just how many active users do we have. And Microsoft keeps going up and PlayStation keeps going flat. And so that's why, even though you look at it and you're like, well, PlayStation shipped way more and they are the de facto console everyone uses, like, they're not growing, which is the main thing all these companies care about, which is why PlayStation is going to go day and date on PC once they figure it out, because their ports are still pretty bad.
Yeah,
That's
side
true.
note, disappointed by the Spider-Man 2 Steam Deck.
It seems rushed because they really wanted to sell more Spider-Man fast. Because Nixus is incredibly good at it. So it's not It's not a company problem. It's a management and planning one.
Logan, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just I was gonna make a joke about if Nintendo's actually gonna learn about internet for the Switch too, so they can start reporting on monthly active users or not. But you know,
They've started with NSO and in actually keeping a storefront in an online system through 2 generations for once. But like, depending on the cost of the Switch too, it's probably not going to do better than the Switch, because the Switch was a unicorn for them in how many software units people bought. Like, people just bought a ton of games per unit sold, which has always been Sony's Achilles heel, where Sony is the default platform for people who buy 1 or 2 games a year at most. And at which point, unless they're also buying a ton of microtransactions, you're not really making any money off of that hardware you just lost on. Like, you're selling the hardware as cheap as you can to try and get people to buy more games. And like, Sony has that Apple prestige, but with that Android audience of actual payers. Whereas Nintendo has that Apple prestige and that Apple audience. Then Microsoft has that Google prestige, but with that Apple audience of people who actually just spend a shit ton of money per console. So everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses, but we are so used to just looking at flat sales numbers that people ignore it. And if you try and explain it, then they call you a defender, and because everyone likes to argue.
Yeah. I'm very curious with the Switch 2 coming out, seeing all of the companies that are currently third parties looking to make their content from like the PlayStation 4, Xbox One era available on there. I'm really hoping, I know I'm in the minority on this, but I'm really hoping that the Switch 2 can come in as close to the $300 mark as possible, just to like get people into that ecosystem at that low point, because I think there's a lot of
I think
people
he's crazy.
I know I'm crazy.
At least 400, probably 450 would be my guess.
And that's a shame, because I think that them hitting that low bar is what sold them so many units. It was so easy for people who had a PlayStation 4 to pick up a Switch because it was just $300. It wasn't like $400, $450, $500 kind of thing. But having that lower entry system and offering PlayStation 4 and Xbox One library onto that hardware is going to do wonders for them if they can get that price point, because it'll have a lot of people that will buy a console, but not like all the consoles. And having some of those games, like, they're not going to spend $500 on a Steam Deck, and they're definitely not going to spend $800 to $900 on a ROG Ally or something like that. So having that Switch 2 and having that the Xbox One kind of PlayStation 4 era of games available portably is a lot more enticing, I think, which will potentially help the Switch 2 sales compared to like the unicorn that the Switch 1 was.
That's kind of the rumor with PlayStation. People are like, oh, they're going to do a portable because they're working on 2 system on chips, supposedly. But the actual rumor was next PlayStation, and I guess it starts at $700 or $800, and then a portable that is cloud focused for PS5 and PS6, but does PS4 natively. Because that actually makes sense with the way they do their games. They don't have all the fancy stuff that Xbox has as far as translation layers. So for them to just have a portable PS5, it's going to be insanely large and thick and have 10 seconds of battery life, because it has to just be a PlayStation 5. It doesn't work. They don't have Series S profiles to run at. And you can't just go in there and say, hey, run at 30 FPS and 720p. They don't have that built in. So I think their options is like the PS Portal 2, which plays all your PS4 games natively, as well as cloud for your the newer stuff. And then Xbox's focus becomes native handheld, not super cheap. I don't think anyone is going to subsidize heavily anymore, because why do they barely stock Series X's? Because they're still losing money on them. Like, nothing's gotten cheaper to make, and depending on our government, it might get even more expensive to make or to bring into the country. So the next gen probably starts at 700 with options to go super expensive if you want a supercomputer version of an Xbox. But that handheld is their play into the burgeoning, handheld PC market. That is still a console, because I do think that's going to be their big differentiator. and why the price might be worth it if it can play all your PC stuff as well. So, very curious how the Switch 2 does in general, with Nintendo being the unicorn on their own software front, but also they've always been the affordable one to have as a second. So if they don't hit that affordability again, it really hurts having a second, especially because who knows how the economy is going to go.
It's definitely a market disruption because you don't get a lot of market disruptors en masse in the gaming industry right now. At least I don't think you do. College football did some blips and moved some units and whatnot. You anticipate Grand Theft Auto 6 being a market disruptor. You anticipate a Switch 2 being a market disruptor. And I feel like all the other companies are just having to predict what happens, what goes on. And
Microsoft's very good at predicting.
They are
too good.
sometimes ahead of their time.
And I think looking back at this, they're behind, actually, because the industry completely changed, but it was around COVID accelerating everything. Because right now, if you don't have, and they had to go out and just buy 2 of them, they had to buy Call of Duty and Candy Crush to be able to get into those black hole games that are just eating up everyone's time, along with social media. And Microsoft doesn't have their own social media platform outside of LinkedIn, which is unbelievably big and people don't seem to realize it, but it's a very specific subset of people. It's not for common use among, memes and shit talkers.
Yeah, I feel like LinkedIn is where you go if you want to have serious conversations about business, and you can't be a troll or nasty or hate on stuff on there because it's tied to your job.
One of the things that I think is going to be interesting to watch when Switch 2 does come out is where and how Xbox sends their catalog, in what order, in what cadence things arrive there. Because you have to imagine, well, I am very confident they're going to send some Halo stuff there. But, at launch, trickle, what's the method? And we just got our latest slate of games going over to PlayStation. We said this last week with Forza Horizon 5. This week we're hearing about Age of Empires and Age of Mythology Retold heading over to PlayStation. So you look at, okay, when Switch 2 arrives, what's that going to mean? Do they send these right away, trickle them through? Do they go into NSO? How do you handle online? All of that will be fascinating. But this is just yet another slate. And I have a theory as an aside that I'm just going to jump straight to. Starfield just hit Game Pass basic, core,
standard,
low level, bronze, standard. Yeah, whatever they've decided to name it this week.
Pleb. Game Pass pleb.
Yeah, and so Starfield just arrived there, and I'm wondering if we don't see Starfield arrive into PlayStation or hear the news of it very soon, given that Avowed and South of Midnight and Doom are all going to be what I anticipate to be positive waves of attention. Do you nestle a Starfield to PlayStation announcement in there? I feel like that announcement's imminent. I know nothing, but like that is a theory that has been bouncing around my head since I saw Starfield arrive into that bottom level of Game Pass, and also thinking about what Xbox has coming up. What do you guys think? Is that a weird thought?
I feel like stuff going to standard is kind of the canary in the coal mine for me. If they're willing to pull it out of Ultimate, that means they've kind of had it in there long enough where they've saturated the numbers and the activity or the player, the MAUs are dropping on that, and that they want to expand it out to a broader audience. So going to standard to me says like, okay, well, let's try and scoop up the Game Pass folks that haven't gotten it, haven't bought it, and haven't already played it through Ultimate. And then that would eventually be like the thing that pushes it to other ecosystems in my mind. But that's just kind of like the trickle down effect that I'm like logic that I'm using there.
Jesse, what do you think?
It's just going to come down to who has the bandwidth, and I think BGS pretty much always does for multiplat. They're as be everywhere and have everything ready to go as can be. So yeah, the moment they feel it's ready, and everyone got mad at John last year for reporting it, but the plan, the things they were looking into doing were once Shattered Space was done, then they could have time to focus on the port. So Shattered Space has been done for a while, so it makes sense. And I do think, and they have repeatedly stated they will still have exclusive moving forward where it makes sense, which is we think this will just do best here, or this dev simply does not have the bandwidth to have a port ready at launch. Like South of Midnight is only on Xbox, and Avowed is only on Xbox. I expect them to get ported at some point if they're at all reasonably successful. But as we have seen with many ports, it's not copy and paste and then play on PlayStation at the top of this. Like, you have to do work to make it run correctly on different hardware setups. So whether that's PC, where there are 10 million different hardware setups, or even just consoles where you've got one or two targets, it is very difficult to make video games, and that does not change if it's just a port. And it is also funny. I think it's like 25 years in between Age of Empire 2 to PlayStation ports, because it was on PS2.
I didn't even realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now, this is obviously DE, but the original was on PS2 in a form.
Right. Listeners, I just sent, if you're in the live chat, I just sent 5 gifted game XEP memberships out to listeners. Thank you guys for supporting us. I want to take a minute and just thank you guys. We had to pay our Canva bill this morning, and it has that yearly drop. So there was $120 there. So all of you guys that are supporting XEP across whatever financial platform you are, thank you. It helps tremendously. So I appreciate you. Enjoy the memberships and the emojis and all that other cool jazz. Plus, we get more cool interviews like Carrie Patel and John Romero and such. Logan, should we read our Patreon supporters today?
Heck yeah. Do you want me to?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. As always, you can head over to patreon.com/Xbox Expansion Pass. On the show, we'd like to shout out the tier 2 and tier 3 patrons just to give them some love and support. So thank you to Fado, Aaron G, Nick Bentley, The Scarecrow, Ken Rosling, Fabian Winkler, Stephen H, Edward, Regis Stella, the Brony Pirate, Rob Frawley II, Tao Zoji, Nicholas Johnson, Randall Thor 19, African, Game Positive, Jampack Sam, Rick Davis, Matt Valdez, Red Beast, Dano12, DJ Hero, Brendan Myers, aka The Winter Gamer, Lord Sir Master James Suddy, Sony's VP of Marketing, Kevin Butler. Thank you all so much for your love and your support. Appreciate it, guys and girls and thems.
Yeah, we appreciate you all. Thank you guys for helping us out. And I double dipped this morning, throwing some Patreon love to Xbox Era, because I'm already a channel member on YouTube, and I just wanted to let you guys know how much I appreciate you guys.
So, thank you, Luke.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the playthrough, or the next part of the Hogwarts Legacy playthrough coming up, by the way. Luke, I have a question. If Starfield goes to PS5, do you think Pete Hines will come back from retirement?
He's too busy yelling about soccer.
I don't know. That was a funny Pete Hines' exit always felt odd to me. Odd in the front facing side we saw. So I'd be curious to read a book or an article down the line that details what was wanted, what didn't happen, what did happen, the directions, the availability for positions, all of that. I think it'd be interesting. A nice Schreier piece there. And I will tie that into a Schreier piece we got this past week. You mentioned Hogwarts Legacy. Jason Schreier put out over on Bloomberg a report about WB Games and some of the things that are going on there as they recently shut down Multiverses. What WB Studios are trying to work on. The Wonder Woman game is in trouble. They're working on a new Batman game, but it is many years out. And obviously Suicide Squad was a disaster. And just what's going on with Hogwarts Legacy DLC or Hogwarts Legacy 2. It is a pure shame that the beloved IP in the DC and Hogwarts realms are just being hogwash tossed around. And it's a shame because there are talented devs there. There are very talented devs there, and it stinks.
I was amazingly bummed when I saw this. I think even Schreier commented about the fact that he's still surprised that you can have so much talent and so much is just like the floundering on studios because executives can't make decisions or don't understand markets or chasing trends and stuff. And it sucks because I think there was a world where we did get a Suicide Squad game that echoed kind of what Gotham Knights was hoping to do as far as like the multiplayer kind of like Arkhamverse game. And it got bogged down by like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you got to hit these things, you got to make sure these are involved, you got to like, and the creativity and the passion was just sucked out of the room as a result.
You see the talent because the game's still very fun. It just was such a mess to create that it did not have what live service games need, which is a breadth of content. It had all the plans for it. People have gone through and they data mined, and you didn't actually kill the Suicide Squad. You killed their clones. Then you saved the Suicide Squad, and you get to play as them, which would have been really goddamn cool. But the game never got to that point because every season they did, because I found the campaign really enjoyable. I really liked playing through that campaign once it worked because it was online only and completely broken at launch. But I really liked that campaign. And my main thing is like, for this game to be at all successful, this seasonal content needs to be good. And then the season 1 hit, and it was do the exact same missions that got repetitive by the end of the campaign. And then season 2 hit, and it was the same thing. And the only new content was a different version of the final boss fight, just barely different. Like that was it. And at that point, it was like, they had nothing. They struggled to get this thing out. They did an amazing job of having a fun game, but this live service end of it is as bad as the Avengers game, which again was very clearly a good single player game, just mashed into a live service package to chase a trend incorrectly. Because chasing trends makes sense. They are trends and people want them, but you either have to be super quick and agile, or you have to have your own good take on it, and you can't just try and be exactly what's already there. Because much like with Netflix, even if you've got all of Disney's IP and everything, Disney Plus isn't going to just immediately kill Netflix's numbers. People are already there. You can't yoink them away very easily, much like Microsoft has essentially said about they're not just going to try and yoink Sony's customers. They're going to go after different ones because you spend so much money trying to do something that you probably can't. And WB's leadership has been horrendous. Like really, really bad, and they lucked out and had an incredible couple of games. Horribly mismanaged Skywalker Saga from Jesus Christ, Telltale. I forgot. No,
TT
not Telltale.
TT Games.
TT, yeah, TT Games. A mess of a development cycle, but then the game was great and did really well, and that empowers you because then like the Hogwarts Legacy one actually seemed to go just fine. It took them 50 tries, but they finally hit with something. But outside of that, you've got all these studios, you get all these IP, and you're not going to really have anything for a couple of years. And so then the guy finally bounces that was in charge of it all, and now it is just a mess. And they've been looking for people to buy studios because they are so bad at running them, but no one's going to buy them if they don't get the rights to those IP for games. So they're never going to sell.
Yeah. It's frustrating. And the forced multiplayer or the forced mechanics into a game said by committee that doesn't understand the industry or understand the needs is very frustrating to me. And it's a bummer that it tends to happen. And I've kind of been bouncing this idea back and forth with multiplayer, single player, which one companies seek out, because Andrew Wilson had his comments, and there was the Dragon Age debate. And like when my friend sends me clips of him playing Dragon Age, that game looks amazing. It looks awesome.
It is. And Andrew Wilson's quotes got a little misconstrued where he was like, we're really happy with the game, how it turned out. It just did not find an audience. And so the audiences are looking for shared world experiences, which is a lot of times we talk about it. Why is everyone chasing live service games? Because those are the ones that make money. Those are the ones people will really engage in. It's one my kids care about. And it's not our generation as much as it is the newer generations coming in. They don't really give a shit about single player. They want to play with their friends, and they don't care where it is. They want it to be everywhere. They don't want it to be on this one thing they've got to buy. They want to have Roblox is everywhere, or Fortnite is everywhere, Call of Duty's everywhere, Sea of Thieves now being everywhere really helped it. Like, that is what they want. And so that is what CEOs kind of have to nicely say to their shareholders, who are the people that are actually talking to.
Well, we saw a while ago, Matt Booty had made a comment about how they are interested in supporting things like Roblox because they are games that have multiple games within the one title. And we've seen Fortnite make that shift as well too. They're starting to produce more types of games outside of just Battle Royale and Save the World in their one little app. And I think that is going to be where a lot of these go. Eventually, we're going to start to see, games kind of taking their name as more of a brand than just an actual game. So like Call of Duty, for example, right now, they've got multiple modes in there, but it's just the Call of Duty game. And I think the more you find multiplayer games doing that, the more I can see like Sea of Thieves is not just Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is Sea of Thieves, but in different zones with different ships and different, like having different versions of Sea of Thieves within Sea of Thieves. Same thing with Minecraft. I'm surprised Minecraft hasn't taken Legends. I think it was Legends.
The Diablo one was,
Diablo
Legends,
was Dungeons. Legends was the
Dungeons and
not
Legends.
RTS. Yeah. That's
I'm
right.
surprised they haven't tried to get those and put them in the Minecraft app, because that's a perfect example of how they could get Legends and Dungeons more active users by kind of shoehorning them into the micros or the Minecraft name.
Mojang is so big and makes so much money that they're kind of allowed to not be forced into stuff ever. So they do kind of just operate on their own everywhere, building stuff up. And Legends was kind of their first miss that didn't really take off. But even then, Dungeons had a ridiculous amount of players. But Minecraft itself is this sacred, it is here for you, even though we kind of got rid of the Java version. It's always still just there and completely moddable. And yes, we sell you all this stuff. We're going to push it like crazy, but they are cognizant of how quickly their audience would probably turn if anything major ever changed on them. So they're always reticent to mess around too much. But they are in the same launcher, as people say in chat. They're just not in the game in some way. You have to load up different things, and even just that extra little click of install is normally enough to get most casual people to go, eh.
Yep.
As I played Dungeons and Legends, both, I enjoyed both, thought they were fun in their own right. I enjoyed them more than standard Minecraft. But I will say multiple times over, did I feel like this would have been cool if I was a Minecraft version of Master Chief or Marcus Phoenix, and I was battling the Horde or the Covenant in those styles. And I was really bummed to not see IP crossover within it, because it's Minecraft. Minecraft does a great job of bringing IP over. And I felt like in Dungeons, it would have been really cool if you were Chief, a Minecraft version of Chief, or you had Minecraft armor or whatnot. And they teased armor types a bit, but they didn't do enough of it. And I really wanted to see some of that with Dungeons. I think that would have helped a lot. And then when it went to PlayStation, the idea of playing Dungeons and one's Chief, one's Kratos, and you're just going through wrecking little mobs, that would have been a blast. I think that's something that doesn't happen enough. So I don't know. Let's see here, guys. I wanted to mention, there's a new showcase coming out of the ESA called Icon. This is the same group that did the E3, which they put to bed, and they settled that down in 2023. Icon is set to connect people together, people in the industry around Xbox pledging support. I found this one odd, and I'm not 100% sure what's going on here, but it's like a public.
It's all business. It's businessmen meeting other businessmen to talk business. It's the business side of E3. It's more the trade show side with no public facing stuff, because they're really bad at the public facing stuff.
So the ESA is trying to get the
E3 back. They're trying to do E3 Classic.
They're trying to get the trade show part back, because that has been severely missing in the industry and was where a lot of deals and stuff would happen, actually in person, because that turned into Gamescom, but then that is a lot of traveling for the American based ones. So it's nice to kind of have both. If you're European or Asian, easier to get to Gamescom. Microsoft still shows up there. Sony doesn't really. Nintendo's there, but in the backgrounds at hotels.
Mhm.
But this is just a big old front-facing summit for a bunch of businessy people to get together and talk NFTs and Web3 and dumb shit, and then the video game people talk video games.
The timing of it I thought was interesting because this showcase is, or this trade show is April 27th through the 30th in 2026, right? So this is the first time this will happen is 2026, not this coming April. But this will happen, essentially a month and change prior to what you anticipate. Again, anticipate the June showcases will be of the time. And I'm curious how they impact one another, if at all. What changes in the meantime? Because when you're at those not E3, when you're at those June showcases, Summer Game Fest, a lot of deals are made in hotel lobbies or handshakes made and people meeting one another. So I'm curious if this is a late April thing, and then you've got your June showcases and your Gamescom, just what's going on is an amusing thing. Daddy D Wally in chat saying, Luke, give us a smile if Avowed is good. So boys, none of us can smile for the rest of the show because we've all played Avowed.
We can't
reveal.
Can't smile reveal. Or frown.
That's right.
It's broken. It breaks into you.
Confused. Oh, damn. There you go. Nice, Jesse. Nice. Good to see you, Soaking It, Nerd Chat. Big B Money still there. One H1D in the chat. Good to see you as well.
This feels like the type of thing that will be impactful years down the line from each thing, because it is focused on just meeting up, talking shit, talking business, which is really boring and very slow moving. So as far as like this 2026 show will probably impact 2027 and 2028 showcases. And it's also not a show. I'm sorry. This event in 2026 will have impacts far down the line, most likely.
Yep.
I'm really hoping that because so many companies are starting to have to look at putting their software other places to try and recoup losses, that maybe like something like this would actually be a good kind of meeting of the minds to kind of sit down and have everyone at the table, hash out some of the issues, have some discussions, come to some reconciliations, and actually like try to see like, okay, well, how can we keep gaming relevant and or not relevant, but it's always going to be relevant and it's always going to be the biggest media entertainment thing, but how can they keep it so that layoffs, studio closures aren't the recourse for why games aren't selling or
it's a business event, so they'll be saying, how can we do more firings, because they're businessmen. I do think a big thing will be just gaming is going to be flat for a while, and how do you react to that? Like, how can we get through flat, because flat is very bad for them when their fiduciary duty to their shareholders is to grow. And so you have to then sell your shareholders on long term or medium term even instead of short, because you had a ridiculous amount of short from 2020 through 2022. And everyone, like, Microsoft's going to make $24 billion with Xbox in a calendar year. There's no crash. There's Sega now. Like, Sega wishes they could have made that in 24 years, 20 years ago. Gaming's making as much money as ever. It's just not making more money than ever for everyone. There's just a few specific people doing that. Like, you look at all the financials that came in, they're all flat or down double digits for everybody across the board.
The funny part, I don't know, it's not funny. I guess the odd part for me is that I hear and see and I read these things. I see all these layoffs, which it feels like after the last few years of layoffs, it's just wild. And like, now we're on the cusp of all these games coming out for Xbox. Avowed, South of Midnight, Doom, Call of Duty.
Technically, they didn't have them this year. They had 1,000. So for the layoffs, they would have been done by now. Their big January layoff would have already happened. Instead of this year being a big one, it was a few hundred people performance-based, and then a few hundred people overall, instead of the, 8-9% of their 230,000 employees at Microsoft. So this year, for Microsoft, it hasn't happened. It's still happening other places like South Iron Galaxy and their last-ditch effort to keep the company afloat, dropping 66 people that they didn't want to. It has been better, especially in lieu of the explosive growth that Activision had during the process of being purchased, where they went from like 7,000 to 17, or is it 8,000 to 17,000? Like they
It was a lot,
doubled
yeah.
while being bought. They
Mhm.
just went on crazy hiring sprees to keep up with all the COVID demand.
Mhm.
So honestly, if Microsoft wasn't always so constantly in the spotlight, like it should be, because oh my God, were they awful in the 90s and 2000s, they
Mhm.
probably wish they could have fired a lot more people because there's so many, but they know they can't always do it because then they look super bad, and they are cognizant of that when it comes to regulators and stuff. So as it is, it has severely slowed for them. Even if you look at Embracer and some others who were going
Mhm.
apeshit with firing and layoffs. I have to say layoffs, or else I get mad.
Mhm.
It's better. I don't think the main driver of growth and investment is going to be back quickly, though. So there might be less firings, but all those people who get fired are still going to have a hard time finding a job.
We couple like the flat growth, the firings being slowed down, but then with some of the interpretations of you want live service or you want big money maker games that are constantly being engaged with, and yet Xbox has Avowed, South of Midnight, and Doom hit arriving all single player, which I'm here for it, but
and I don't know that anyone really talked to Phil about it. Hopefully someone, I might have missed it if they did. But Microsoft is in a unique position with Game Pass and their multi-platform strategy as a platform holder to actually invest in those types of things. Like South of Midnight's a $40 game. It's a smaller budget, smaller team. Same thing for Ninja Theory. Like Hellblade 2, smaller team, smaller budget. Then you got Indie, bigger team, bigger budget, still nothing crazy or over the top. Machines Games has never been that big. I think Microsoft is in the best position to keep putting out single player games. Like they have a bunch of live service games already. They have the thing Sony's looking for. Sony just has the audience they are looking for, hardware wise, they would like to have. But they're all kind of like Microsoft has a much bigger audience across all the devices because they bought it. But still, it is there. It is constantly making money. And that lets you keep investing in ways that I think a lot of the other publishers are really struggling to figure out right now.
Logan, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, Luke, you brought it up. We've got a ton of games coming out this year, a ton, and it's surprising to me that we are still seeing companies talk about how they're having to adjust their forecasting. And I mean, Nintendo just had to adjust their forecasting, and I'm like, Nintendo has to? Like, they sell their hardware at a profit. They have the most revered IP that any publisher would love to have to be able to throw in marketing. Like, they absolutely shouldn't have to be adjusting forecasts. But I think the problem is that they have that problem where you announce the new thing, and now everyone's going to stop buying the old thing because they're just going to wait for the new thing. So for the first quarter, I think in a while I think they've had a couple in the past, but I think this is like one of the few quarters where they're actually having to say like, hey, we're not going to make as much as we did, which kind of makes me curious. Like with all the games that are coming out, it just seems wild that they are not making profit, in a way that they were anticipating. And it makes me wonder, are we going to see this reflected in hardware? Are we going to see manufacturers starting to shift away from the as close to bleeding edge as they can get with their consoles and start trying to put out consoles that are a little like slightly marginal improvements, like instead of what we have now, which is like the entry level PlayStation system and then the Pro 4 years later, will the Pro be the new generation that they jump to? So instead of the PlayStation Pro or PlayStation 5 Pro, that hardware would actually be the PlayStation 6, and they can lower their costs in hardware that way to do slightly incremental bumps in hardware.
I think that's actually already happened. There were rumors that the Switch 2 was meant to be a Switch Pro. That's why it is so similar in most ways. The Series X is their Pro version for this generation. They said right off the bat that's why they're still losing money on it, because it was way more expensive to make than $500. It was like I think they'd get approval for losing 1.4 billion to make a whole bunch and sell them during a holiday sale. Like they're going to lose 1.4 billion dollars because it just costs so much to make it, and it has not gotten cheaper. And the PlayStation's the most interesting one because they are less tied to their hardware than they were, but they are still seen as the default platform. And I do think when their next console most likely starts at $700, and generations are probably shorter because they don't want to do pro, they just want to do rolling, because people will rollingly buy a phone over but over 2 years you're spending your $700 to $1,400. But a phone's way more necessary in life. You kind of can't live without one nowadays. How do they bridge that gap for a luxury device of a gaming console? Because it is the far and away the cheapest way to have constant enjoyment. Because I go to the movies with my wife and we have an amazing 2 hours for $40 with no food or drinks, and then it's done. Where I can spend $40 on South of Midnight and I'm getting probably at least 10, if not 20 hours of entertainment. Or you buy a little Kemco JRPG that someone made an RPG maker, but they happen to be really talented, and you spend $10 and you got 70 good hours out of it. Like nothing else has that. So how they find that way, I think they've been trying. I do just think Microsoft's play is you've got more expensive to start, but then it kind of goes nuts with our third-party partners if you want to have your base Xbox that plays your Xbox games, but it's also a really strong PC type of deal. So I will be extremely curious to see how it all goes. And if I knew, I'd be very rich.
I got a question for you guys, and it's something that I happened to be going down a weird rabbit hole on YouTube the other night, and the concept of expansions on systems was something that was experimented with a lot during the 90s. And I'm curious if we might, because of the architecture on consoles, how akin they are to PCs in some ways. We've seen Microsoft kind of take their hardware and roll out larger hard drive sizes to try and like offer options outside of like the actual expansion cards that they do. I'm wondering if that would be something that we could see in the future with other consoles, where instead of just expanding the hard drive or the actual like size of how many games you can put on there, you can go in and relatively easily adjust the amount of RAM or upgrade the graphics on there. I know a lot of this is SoC, which is like system on the chip kind of like creating and stuff, but it seems interesting to me. Like we have docks that can have cards in them that can push power for handhelds that can't quite meet the graphics that you would want on like an actual TV. They're fine for handheld, but the dock actually gives you a little more performance. I'm wondering if stuff like that is something that Xbox consoles or PlayStation consoles will look to in the future as a way to add additional power for a mitigated cost.
It's insanely expensive. If you look at the PlayStation SSD solution, it's a pain in the butt, but it's a one-time pain in the butt and it's cheaper. Then you look at the Xbox one, just plug and play. It'll be amazing for the handheld. But CF Express is stupidly expensive for plug and play SSDs. And the way motherboards work, where you've got your CPU and then you've got your PCI lanes, you also have to then figure out, because the distance really matters. The further they are, the slower it is, the more muddled all the connections get. If you don't get a perfect plug-in on something like that, you end up losing performance. Just going over cables, you lose performance. Like a 4080 external dock card doesn't run nearly as well as a 4080 internal card. It just can't. Because of latency, because of all these different factors. And they're like twice the cost. They're like insanely expensive. You're like $2,000, I think, just for the not even the top tier stuff sometimes. Jeez. So it's always a possibility. It just comes down to, is anyone ever going to buy it? Because like Sega was big time on really cool cutting edge bleeding technology that no one bought. It just couldn't. Like, I don't need sewer sharks. I'm fine. FMB games look cool, but then I played one at my friend's and it was shit. And then, okay, well, I've now plugged in this dock, and I didn't care that it wasn't 4K before. So I, as a casual gamer, don't care that it's 4K now. It's like, ooh, that's cleaner. But most people don't actually care, which is why the main play, and I do actually think if they can convince Take-Two to do it, and I don't think it would be impossible, simply because you still have to buy it. If they can get Grand Theft Auto 6 to be a play on the cloud, if you buy it, not Game Pass. You obviously need Game Pass for the cloud, but like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and a lot of other games, if it's there and you still have to buy it, it doesn't change anything for Take-Two. But that PC audience, the casuals, people, anyone with a phone that doesn't have it, that could be enormous for that. Because I know GeForce Now runs cloud way better than xCloud does, but you have to have GeForce Cloud. You're playing PC games, and you have to buy the PC games. And I do think that the cost of entry is everything, whether it's hardware and upgrading, and you're mostly selling to people who have no idea what good looks like. Like they don't actually know that this just runs 10% better on here than it does there.
I see where you're going with that. And I appreciate the feedback on the kind of like modularity approach to that. But I kind of wonder whenever I hear folks talk about the entry costs for being able to play games on cloud, I have to think of like, well, what is the internet that they're using like, and what is that experience going to be? Because if they're not going to invest in hardware to play games at a good quality, are they investing in internet as well? And internet that would support, like most people who have, a couple people living in their household situation, in the bandwidth for that. Yeah,
you only need about if you're going to have like a bunch of people on, you need like 100 down and 25 up, which I think is probably pretty close to the average in cities, especially in America. It's not nearly as much because they're only 1080p, like 4K, PS5 4K, GeForce Now 4K. Yeah, you need 250, 500 to really be able to soak that in correctly. But even if you just got 25 down, the cloud will just run at 480p. And if you're on an old ass TV, like there are so many weird use cases when you get out of our sphere of what we know and what we are used to. Because my kids can somehow play goddamn touch games on this that look like garbage, but they're just having fun touching their screen. I don't so get it. But they've grown up just doing everything on screens that they touch, that they are more used to it. They have no idea how to fix a computer. Like every time my son's computer has a problem, I have to go up and fix it because he has no clue. He just wants it to work, and just working is everything. And having cool options for us and for others, I definitely think they would go for. But the actual focus is generally just going to be, what can we price this at to not lose money on it anymore? After that, we'll see. So like building in modularity and other types of things could be really cool and can work, I think, for more niche cases. On the super broad, trying to sell 10 plus million, because that is way more than any of the handheld PCs sell. They have to just factor in how apathetic most of their customers are going to be towards performance. They don't know that this is bad. Like my kids playing Roblox, they're like, this is fun. It's like, yeah, that one of the worst looking things I've ever seen. Like, I don't care.
Right. My students will say, hey, have you played this game or that game? They'll name a game. I'll be like, I've never heard of that. They're like, oh, it's in Roblox. I'm like, what? No.
Dress to impress. I'm in.
Like, that's not a...
Yeah.
It's literally just a bunch of stick people walking down a friggin' runway with all ridiculous looking clothing trying to impress other people in chat.
So weird. But it just makes me old. Let's see here. Guys, as we are winding down, if you've got questions, super chats, or the like, drop them in and I will get to read them. We have a question here from one Todd Oxtra. And Jesse, I think you kind of alluded to this in some ways. with news of Iron Galaxy on the verge of closure and their history with Killer Instinct, is it odd that Xbox didn't move forward with a new fighting game featuring their IP? I will say, for my part, we don't know that didn't happen. We don't know that didn't try to happen.
Nick's rumor mill has had a new Killer Instinct in development for a while, and he's annoyingly accurate because he said Rocksteady's working on Batman last year.
It's annoyingly accurate because he never stops reminding you that he's annoyingly accurate.
Yep.
I will say, Todd, outside looking in, not being Special Nick and not having the inside source here, it is wild to me that we don't see a fighting game of some sort and a crossover style game with a lot of the Xbox IP. But it's as wild to me as not seeing Fusion Frenzy back during the Xbox One era when we knew they needed it, not seeing Forza do a kart racer when I felt like they needed it, seeing more Forza crossover. Like, there's some things that they do try to do, and we find out later on that this is why it didn't work. Also, from the outside looking in, we don't always have the stats, the numbers, and such. But I will tell you, I don't care about that stuff anymore. I just want to play the stuff that I think is cool. And that's just my take.
Yeah, and also, shockingly enough, fighting games don't normally make that much money. Like, they're not that big. Even look at like Street Fighter 6 was a huge release, and it sold a couple million. It's done fine. They can be scoped down.
Microtransactions, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, oof. Yeah. That's how you know. Like Tekken and Street Fighter and everything, they really have to go nuts. Like everyone was saying, my God, how come they don't have NBC collection? It's because even if it costs $500,000 to fix up the GDK or to fix up their old MT framework to run on the new Xbox dev kit, they're not going to make that back. So the only reason those games are coming now is because Microsoft probably paid for it. Microsoft helped cover it. Like, as far as those things go, they don't sell that well. Like Mortal Kombat is actually the big one for selling, and even MK1 was a disappointment. It's really big genres for us don't sell nearly as well as big genres that don't get covered a lot. Like, you can just look at Maple Story or so many different Asian mobile games that make more in a month than Street Fighter has in a decade. And that's where investment in time will go. And so they have to pick and choose. What do they think is going to both make people happy and actually make money? Like, everyone really wants Banjo-Kazooie back. If they ever do it, it's going to be a smaller budget thing because platformers, as we saw with Game of the Year Astro Bot, they don't sell bonkers, which is why Sony was smart. Astro Bot was a smaller team with a smaller scope, smaller budget, made a great game, didn't have to make, they didn't have to have 7.5 million $70 copies to break even like Spider-Man 2 did. So
you did mention NBC Fighting Collection. I just want to say that is out now on Xbox. For anyone that doesn't know, Xbox Era has a review up. Special Nick did it. I have long since wanted this to be on Xbox because I just love, Street Fighter and I love superheroes. So it's a great thing for me. Plus, a lot of these games shined on the Xbox 360 back in the day. But old Xbox Live Arcade, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, man, it was so much fun. But we were kind of left out to dry when this game came over for all the reasons that Jesse just mentioned. Now this collection is there for Xbox One, which means Series SX. It's there if you want to play it. And I just wanted to point people to
it. And the Capcom Dreamcast collection, they can't call it that. The Fighting Collection 2 is coming day one for everything on May 16th now.
Which
lots of good games.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that one.
Somebody complained in our Nick's review he put up last night. It's not on Xbox Series consoles. It's like it's on Xbox One and PS4. They don't have current gen versions because you don't need it because they're incredibly old games that are just going to run at their original resolution in 60 FPS. That's it.
Nerds. It's in a world where things just upscale now or smart delivery, whatever. Relax. It's there. It's fine. Let's see. I mentioned that one. Did we actually answer the question about fighting games?
Oh yeah, my main point was if they haven't done it, it's just because that genre is not big enough, and they don't. You need a studio that wants to do it. Like they're not gonna. They may go out and look for someone to work on something, but you need. Phil's always said, and Matt Booty has said, they need a good. You got a good pitch. You can pretty much work on whatever as long as the pitch is good and makes sense. So if somebody came to them with that, or internally just had a really good pitch for like a kart racer or a fighter, and could show that they could do it, then that would be when it happens. So,
which makes the people always call for Banjo, and Thomas Muller Ori says openly and publicly that he's pitched Banjo. It's like, well, it hadn't happened yet. Like, is that why? Was the pitch not good? You know,
well, back then he also demanded multi-plat, and they weren't doing that yet. So maybe nowadays they would.
Look,
But they are busy with No Rest for the Wicked.
If people want Banjo Kazooie, go play Ukulele. Like, those devs are still making games. They're just not Banjo Kazooie games.
Ukulele just came out.
Yeah,
Did it really?
Yeah, they just put it out, and they got a whole bunch of Shovel Knight stuff in there now. And it's like, those games are there. Go play them.
Ooh.
Would I like that? I love Shovel Knight. Would I like Ukulele?
Actually,
It's not like
you
Shovel
might.
Knight at all. Yeah, the game itself is good. It's not like Shovel Knight at all. He's just like in there as a character.
Yeah, he's just a character. Like, you can go play as him.
Someone sell me
if I
on
recall.
Ukulele. Will I like this?
I mean,
Is this a thing Luke
you
likes?
enjoyed oh god, what's the I can't think of the other game. The Nine Tails, was it? No.
Nope.
What was the Super Lucky's Tale?
I love Super Lucky's Tale. New
Oh,
Super Lucky's
okay.
Tale.
So it looks
New
like
Super Lucky's Tale
PlayStation.
was awesome. I love that game. You didn't like it, Jesse?
No, I was reading PlayStation's Twitter where
Oh no.
Is
no, this
PlayStation
is the
Network still down? Is it still? It's still down, right?
yeah, it still seems to be
We
down.
didn't talk about that, but I don't really.
So
Well, I have
Tom
I'm
Warren-
not dunking on them.
Tom Warren tweeted that Sony still hasn't commented, but Microsoft did just say that they blocked a staggering DDoS attack on the Azure Xbox infrastructure over Christmas. So chances are very good whenever these things go down, that is the reason. It's not incompetence. It is a-holes attacking, generally from, most of the time it is from China or Russia.
Which, side note, I will not dunk on PlayStation for having the network down. That happens. It's not fun.
No, I wasn't looking for a dunk. I was
No,
looking
I know
for
you
a-
weren't.
Information, because I haven't said anything since 16 and a half hours ago.
I know you're not, Logan. I'm just making it very clear that that's not fun. I didn't get to play Rivals with my friends last night because it was down. Like, that's not fun because we all crossplay. And so I don't understand. I understand. I don't subscribe to the silly fanboy warring nature of it. It's like, no, that's not good. We don't like this. I
Yeah.
don't like this at all.
No, I was more just gonna be like, this is if and it's Jesse, I'm glad you bring up the comments from Microsoft, because sometimes these things happen and we never find out about it.
Mhm.
But when it does happen, everyone's trying to point fingers. And it always kind of goes back to the idea, it's like, we need to figure out digital libraries a little bit better. And it always comes back to the idea of, like, we need to have a way to have stronger authentication process that lasts longer than 24 hours for games that don't need online access. Yeah, that don't need multiplayer kind of thing. That was the only point that I wanted to make.
I think you're absolutely right. Like, we do need a way for people to play when they're not online. You do run into all types of issues there. And then you talk about, well, we've got all these single player games coming. We started with Indie, Avowed, South of Midnight, Doom. Like, what are the online requirements there? Not a big concern, I don't think, but a fair concern.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like DDoS attacks or anything else.
It would be nice that if I'm playing on my home console and I am logged in, any single player game that is installed on that system has authority until I log out or I log in somewhere else, that I can play that game offline. I don't think that's unreasonable.
I don't either. At least not on the surface. Not without. I mean, like, maybe there's logistics I'm not catching, but I don't see why not.
Because I think
if you're not game sharing, it works fine right now.
Yeah.
But the way game sharing works is your home console can load all your stuff while you're offline, but that's your friend or your family member. You must be logged in, so you can't log in because it's down, so you can't play. There is no fix, essentially, outside of no longer offering game sharing.
Let's see. Briscoe Sun writes in, do we really think we are getting next-gen consoles, or is everyone dropping handhelds? Hybrids?
I would love a hybrid at an affordable price, something under $500. I think
It's
that would,
not gonna happen, Logan.
No.
I'm gonna keep pushing for it. I am
An
gonna
actual a Series S portable would probably be like $650.
That's too much.
And the Series S is ruining gaming.
Oh no, it's always Series S's fault.
But yes,
Yeah.
there will definitely still be underbox consoles for the next gen. After that, it'll probably just be. I mean, Microsoft's already doing it. They're gonna the future of Xbox is Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a console version for their hardware. It gives you a cloud version for their cloud service, and it gives you a PC version. You make one thing. That's it. So the Play Anywhere really is Play Anywhere.
Mhm.
I know people are always like, "Oh, there's not enough Play Anywhere." It's because most of it right now you've got to make bespoke console and PC versions. Most people aren't going to bother with the PC one. They don't have a big enough market share. How do you fix that?
Yeah.
You only make one, and it works everywhere. So that'll be the hybrid approach because it just by default you get your shit everywhere.
Shout out to Will Brokeboy Lewis in chat. Dark City, good to see you as well. Austin T, good to see you. Gents, it's about time to start wrapping up. I know we've all got a lot of projects in the hopper. I'll tell anybody, if you are here on this channel right now or listening to this show, please go check out that Carrie Patel interview for Avowed. Very proud of that. Very, very hopeful that continues and people enjoy it. Because I love interviewing people, and to go from John Romero to the Power Rangers one for my fun, and then Carrie Patel was cool. And so I thank everybody for supporting there. Jesse, we'll start with you, my friend. What's coming to Xbox Era this week that you can talk about, or any other projects that you can talk about?
Like everyone else, for the most part, we've got Avowed coming on the 13th. I have to play the South of Midnight preview. John's already done his preview and video, but they were able to get me access as well. So I'm going to play that to be able to talk about it on Tuesday the 11th. I think that hits at noon Eastern US. So we'll have headlines a little later that day for people that watch. Headlines next week is later in general because John's going to be at DICE in Vegas because he's a nerd who loves flying around in America. It's real safe right now. Other than that, the big thing today, outside of working on other stuff in the future, we got episode 249 of the Xbox Era podcast in approximately 4-ish hours, so at 5 o'clock Eastern, with a tease for episode 250 next week that you do not want to miss.
Nice.
Congrats on the 250 coming up, by the way.
Thank you.
Big time. Super happy for you guys. And I'm anxious to see your South of Midnight stuff. Logan and I aren't doing that one or not, so I'm anxious to see
John
how
did.
that
I will
plays out.
say, John did a very good job with his preview.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Looking forward to it. Logan, what's happening over on the Keelhauled front and XEP front, my friend?
Keelhauled's coming out on Monday. We just got a ton of news about the season 15 content that will be trickling its way in starting on the 20th. You and I are both working on Avowed. You're doing the review for it, but I'm going to be kind of getting my thoughts and feelings in on it as well too, because I would like if we can do like a spoiler cast on that one, just to kind of dive in and really share some like opinions, especially
fun
because I've come from like an Obsidian background. You haven't, and I think that those perspectives are going to be very interesting for folks to hear, because I see a lot of like Obsidian's like blood in this game.
Stop.
That's all I'm saying.
Just
they made the game.
All right.
You can see it from just the interview that you have with Carrie Patel. You can see that.
Yeah, she said a lot of things that I resonate with as an Obsidian fan.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
That's all I'll say.
Sorry, I didn't.
There's always ways. There are always ways to talk around it, especially like Eternal Strands was coming out. I had already beaten it and done a review, but then they put a demo out, and so I was able to just talk about the demo, just the demo.
There you go.
There you go.
Gotcha. Smart man.
Carrie Patel's insight into the game made me feel like Obsidian made that game with a lot of love
with computers.
There you go.
Yeah,
with computers. That's right. Oh man. So yeah, no, I'd be down for a spoiler cast. Jesse, you could come too if you want to do that, man.
That'd be fun. So let me know.
So.
Awesome.
Alrighty, guys. Keep your eye on XEP this week. Avowed review will go up this week. All intents and purposes, I'm aiming to work through a good bit today. Script is halfway done. Need to finish a bit of it. put up, edit, throw it up there with everybody else there. Keep your eye on Era for South of Midnight and Avowed coverage. And then we have another big thing we're jumping right into right after. So
And there's like 3 other things coming out around it that we don't even have yet. And then there's more in March.
It's awesome.
Mhm.
It's a lot.
It's my favorite
I
thing.
picked up Go ahead.
My favorite thing is just doing reviews. So being able to bounce from them to them to them, I'm happy.
I have stuff sitting on my VR unit that I want to play. But I went from VR review to Steam Deck review, and then all this stuff hit. And it's like, no, I really want to play Behemoth. I really want to, but
They fixed
apparently
it.
I have to go to work. Did
Behemoth,
they? Oh, yes.
Behemoth drove me crazy at launch because of the stamina. Now you can turn that off.
Nice. Okay, I'm stoked.
Stamina.
Alrighty, guys.
Sorry.
That's
VR stamina, no good.
No, it is not. That is going to be it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.